Members of council, ladies and gentlemen, the clerk informs me that it is now 7 o'clock, so I will call this council meeting to order. And I would ask you please to stand and join with me in a moment of silent reflection and then our national anthem, O Canada. Madam Clerk, are there any agenda announcements and/or amendments?
Yes, 3 announcements. Firstly, Staff Report Course 7219 Multi-Year Budget Strategy has been added as an addendum item as number 3 under items for consideration. This item was deferred from the December 9th Council meeting. Secondly, Bylaw number 121-2019 regarding an amendment to the Uniform Traffic Bylaw has been updated with respect to Schedule 23, and copies have been made available on Council desks. Lastly, due to prior notice of related disclosures of pecuniary interest, Staff Report Comms 1219 regarding the 2019 Milton Community Fund will be dealt with immediately following consent on this evening's agenda, with Mayor Krantz as chair for this agenda item.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification on those amendments or additions? Not, we will proceed. Any member of council, any disclosures at this point in time? Councillor Tesser-Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am a paid member of the Italian Canadian Club of Milton, and I know that they are receiving some money from the community fund, so I want to declare that. I
thank you. Councillor Di Lorenzo.
I'm also making 3 declarations in regards to community fund. One for Milton Good Neighbors Community Day, as in the past they've purchased advertising in my magazine. One for the Italian Canadian Club of Milton for the same reason, and one for health and healthcare, again for the same reason. Those 3.
I thank you. Councillor Cluett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Regarding the same report, COMS 1219 for the community fund allocations, declaring a conflict because of the fact that I am a member of the fundraising cabinet of the United Way of Halton and Hamilton. So, duly noted.
Councillor Best.
Yes, same item, Your Worship. For the community fund, as a member of the Destination Campbell Community Association, as well as the Italian Canadian Club of Milton.
Any further disclosures? And again, you heard the clerk mention a few moments ago, that's the reason why I'll be handling it, because in a short while, Councillor Tesser-Dirksen will be assuming the chair, and that's where she also has the disclosure, so I'll be handling it from here. So with that, special recognition, Mr. Cripps, all of us can use some innovative traffic solutions, especially in the Greater Toronto area, because where traffic sometimes can certainly be horrendous. So welcome, and share with the listening audience and the public out there some of the new technologies hopefully going to be there to help all of us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure tonight to present 2 the town the Innovative Traffic Solutions Award in the category of medium and smaller municipal areas. Following a successful pilot program in the downtown Milton, where the MyoVision system was installed to move traffic through the Martin Main and commercial main intersections, the town installed MyoVision on one of our busiest corridors, Thompson Road. While projects like this can sometimes take years to implement, our traffic division, headed up by Heidi Schlegel, moved quickly to have this system installed and operational within a matter of a few months. Once the system was up and running, traffic times reduced by 17% in the morning, and by 33% in the afternoon. Your Worship, I'm proud to present to Council this various prestigious award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cripps, and I'm going to come down there in just a brief moment, but before I make my way down there, I'm just wondering if any member of council has any questions or any comments on the award that I'm about to receive. Members of council, anything? Okay, clerk's going to follow me down there as well. Again, Paul, thank you very much for the work that you have done, and of course the people that work with you. It's much appreciated, and of course that award will be properly displayed here in the display cabinet here at the Town Hall. Thank you very much. Resolution moved by Councillor Di Lorenzo and seconded by Councillor Best, and be it resolved that consent items numbers 1 to 10 be approved. Members of council, is there any one of these that was pulled out and dealt with separately? Councillor Best?
Numbers 9 and 10.
9 and 10. Is there any other item that any member wished pulled out and dealt with separately? Okay, Councillor Best, number 9 first.
Yes, regarding the Omaha Village Heritage and Character Area, I understand there's some residents in the audience that weren't able to register to speak to this item. I just ask that Council move that we waive the rules to allow them to speak. I understand it'll just be a short presentation just to highlight their concerns regarding the study.
Okay, thank you. So you're prepared to move that, Councillor Best?
Yes, I am.
And Councillor Clue is prepared to second it? Okay, the verbal motion is to hear from anyone in the audience dealing with item number 9. Questions? No, just a minute, sir. First of all, those in favor? That is carried. Now, I have to deal with number 10 as well, okay? Take care of it. Councillor Best, you had number 10.
Yeah, just to thank staff regarding this item. Just one request from one of the persons that put their name in for it is that could staff notify the person that requested the name when the street name is actually decided on by the builder and put in place, because unfortunately the process is now that we don't notify the requester. And also just to highlight that I appreciate staff's work, that it's not just the individual that's the name, it's usually not only the husband and wife as well as the whole family, because I know in some situations where both partners were quite well involved in the community. It's not just the person that suggested.
Certainly a good point, and I as one individual have no problem with that. Is there any further discussion on number 10? Okay, now there may or may not be a change on 9, so I'll just hold off on that as well until we hear the delegation. And of course, on the assumption that it might be approved as presented, or there may be some amendments or additions or deletions to it. So with that, sir, welcome. If you would identify yourself, name, address for the record, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mike Lazar. I reside at 5784 4th Line. It'd be the first property south of the Omaha intersection. I also own the property at 9920 Britannia, which is the first property west of 4th Line on the south side. I have no issues with what the town is doing and the way they're going about it. The previous reports that were put out were somewhat inaccurate with respect to the information that was provided at the public meetings, but I'm confident that the current team has a good grasp on things. My concern is it's over and over being referred to as a village of Omaha, and by naming it a village, there are certain aspects or certain beliefs that come with what a village is. Omaha is 200 years old. The original Omaha is gone. The Omaha from 100 years ago is mostly gone, and the Omaha that's currently there has some really nice historic value, but there's a lot of other properties that have no value. I would suggest that this report get moved forward, but delete the term village, as we really don't know what Omaha currently is or what it's going to become.
Sir, if you would just remain there for a moment, there are no miscoupments. I believe that some of this comes under your jurisdiction. You've heard the request, and I've had no discussion with anyone what this may or may not do, and I understand, you know, the village concept, I understand the hamlet concept, I understand the crossroads concept of identifying villages, hamlets, or crossroads. So, Ms. Koopmans, help me and us on that request or that point.
Through you, Your Worship, it's just a historic name for the location. It isn't meant to give it any status as any kind of community in a hierarchy. It's just recognizing historically what Omaha has been in the past. And that's the purpose of the study as well, to look at the heritage of Omaha and to recognize that and see through the Boyne survey, we contemplated how it would be incorporated and preserved. So that's really what the study is doing.
Okay, members of council, are there any questions of the delegation? Councillor Tesser-Dirksen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, welcome. I'm wondering if you didn't want to use the village in the name, what would you propose as an alternate?
It may be that we call it village at the end of the day. Currently, what I don't want to do is create the illusion that it's a village and we start designing something based on preconceived notions of what a village is. Omaha in 1818 was founded as a farming community. In 1874, I believe, when they built the school, it was referred to as the hamlet of Omaha. The Church of Christ, when they erected their plaque, just basically called it Omaha, Ontario. So nowhere in any historical information that I can find is it referred to as a village. In some of these documents, it refers to Omaha as the last village within Trafalgar. A village is defined as a body or an area that's larger than a hamlet, but smaller than a town. We have 3 hamlets. We have Campbellville, Moffat, and Brookville. All of those are substantially larger than what Omaha proper, if you want to call that, has become. Omaha was a farming community. It was based on hundreds and hundreds of acres of farming, and that aspect of its history will be gone. What will be left? We have 11 villages in Ontario. The smallest one's over 400 acres. Omaha won't be 400 acres when we finish this process. I don't want to put any preconceived notions in front of anyone that it's a village. I think we should start with a clean slate and decide what the next evolution of Omaha is. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
Any other member, any questions of the delegation? Sir, do you have any concluding remarks?
I applaud the town for the work that they're doing. I would just like that minor modification so we don't have any preconceived notions.
I thank you very much. Again, members of the public, the motion that I dealt with, if there was anyone in the audience wishing to address this item, this is your opportunity to come forward. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address this item? If not, I thank you, sir. Okay, now it's been pulled out, and I don't see any suggestion with additions, amendments, or deletions. Councillor Best?
Yes, Your Worship, through to staff, that just to remind them that I certainly agree with Mr. Lazar that, you know, I've never heard it referred to as a village, and I hope that this concern is noted in any future reports.
Now, I'm only going to assume if the majority of council, unless this is pulled out separately, that what's being proposed in the report is going ahead as printed with that reference to village. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay, on that assumption. You've heard the motion dealing with all those 10 items. If nothing further, those in favor of the motion. That's carried. And members of council, before I turn the chair over to Councillor Tesser Dirksen there to proceed with the majority of the agenda, this is where she has the conflict along with other members of council, and you know who you are, but I know the rules here, so I know those individuals will have to excuse themselves as they will. I have a motion moved by Councillor Di Lorenzo. I'm sorry, that's now changed to, I believe he's got the conflict on there. Yeah, but who's moving it, I guess? Well, he's got a conflict on it, so...
It's the one that's except all the ones that we have conflicts on.
Okay, so, okay, save and accept then, okay. Moved by Councillor Di Lorenzo and second by Councillor Best. And be it resolved that the community fund application number 1 to 41 save and accept numbers number 22, 5, 12, 13, and Schedule C be approved. That the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any agreements associated with the approved recommendations contained within the staff report COMS 01219. And it's a save and accept there. So. Questions on that motion? Being none, those in favor of the motion, and that's carried. Okay, this is separate, still dealing with the same item. Resolution moved by Councillor Di Lorenzo and second by Councillor Best. And be it resolved that an allocation of $20,000 be made to the United Way, Halton and Hamilton, for distribution to agencies serving the Milton community. And again, this is where Councillor Cluett has the disclosure. Any questions on this motion? If not, those in favor of the motion, and that's carried. This is the one that Councillor Best has the disclosure on. Resolution moved by Councillor Di Lorenzo and seconded by Councillor Ali. Be it resolved the community fund application number 5 related to the Destination Campbellville Community Association contained in Schedule C be approved. Any questions on this motion? Being no, those in favor of the motion. That's carried. This is the one that Councillor Di Lorenzo has the conflict on. Resolution moved by Councillor Ali, second by Councillor Best, and be it resolved, the community fund application number 12 related to the Halton Healthcare contained in Schedule C be approved. Questions on this motion? If none, those in favor of that motion. That's carried. This one deals with the Italian-Canadian Club, where some of you had the disclosure on it. Resolution moved by Councillor Chandler and second by Councillor Cluett, and be it resolved that the Community Fund application number 13 related to the Italian-Canadian Club contained in Schedule C be approved. Are there any questions on this motion? Being none, those in favor of the motion. And that's carried. And this one deals with the Good Neighbors Community Day, where Councillor, I think it's Di Lorenzo's got the conflict on. Motion moved by Councillor Ali, second by Councillor Best, and be it resolved that an allocation of $5,100 be made to the Milton Good Neighbors Community Day. Questions on this motion? Being none, those in favor of the motion, and that's carried. Okay, just before I vacate the chair and declare the council meeting over, while I'm still in the chair here, this, of course, will be the last council meeting of the year 2019. Just want to thank my colleagues very, very much for the past year. I believe we've achieved a great deal. But more particularly, I want to wish every member of council, every citizen in the town of Milton, and of course the great region of Halton, a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So the best this season, and again, unless there's some emergency, this will be the last meeting for this year in council. So, okay, Councillor Ali is mentioning the levy, of course, here as well on January 1st. And while we're at it, the bell ringing as well, Mark Saliba will be ringing in, and she's been a community advocate for raising funds for many charitable organizations in this town for quite some time. So she'll be ringing in the year 2020. So with that, and again, it's only, if I get my math right, roughly 3 weeks away or less than that at this point in time. So with that, Councillor Melbuff.
Yeah, before we move on, Mr. Mayor, I believe this is the last council meeting that our Commissioner Paul Cripps will be presiding at, and I'd just like to, on behalf of council and the citizens of Milton, thank you for your years of service and good luck in whatever your endeavors are.
Yeah. And Councillor Melbu, thank you very much for that, and I think it's well deserved. So, Mr. Cripps, you've been singled out there, and I would afford you the opportunity of you any words, because, and again, as Councillor Melbu mentioned, this will be the last time that you will be appearing before council. So.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to all the members of council. It's been a great ride. We've done a lot together, and we've accomplished great things, and I want to thank council, I want to thank staff, SMT, and the residents of Milton. I think, like I said, it's been just terrific. I've learned so much, and I think I've really grown as a professional and just as a person. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and good luck. And I know, members of council and ladies and gentlemen, Paul is a very good golfer as it is, so I suspect in your retirement you'll even probably get better. And I don't know how you can get better because I think you're pretty good at it as it is there. So we wish you much success. Councillor Melville?
Yeah, I've seen him play golf, and I wonder how much time he actually spent at the office on the job. You don't learn to play golf like that working 40 hours a week. So.
He's an excellent golfer, so you have a bit more time now on the golf course. So thanks, Paul, very much. With that, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, this council meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Councillor Tesser-Dirksen, if you would assume the chair. Members of council, ladies and gentlemen, give us about 2 minutes to turn around.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome everyone. We're going to launch right into staff report number PD 05219, and this is the request for relief waiver of application fees. I believe we have 2 delegates scheduled to speak. First, I have Mr. Keith Hadlow. Is Mr. Hadlow here? Come forward, please. Welcome. You can push the button just on the mic there, and I'll get you to state your name clearly along with your address for the record.
Keith Hadlow, 5477 Campbellville Road. I'm not really sure where to begin. This is regarding a variance that's required for 62 Miles Street. I went through the process with the town. I have from zoning on the first status reports requiring me to propose to get a survey with the house to be demolished. And then after that fulfillment, I've got on my latest one, which was August, demolition permit required before issuance of building permit. I go through all this process. I go to get my building permit. The clerk that's looking after this says we'll have it in 3 days. 3 days goes by, a week goes by, a week and a half. I go and check in, find out that zoning is now saying that my house is too big. My designer has said that my house was 24%. Through the survey, the surveyor corrected a mistake that the designer did regarding to the size of the garage, and he came up to 24.9%, and now the town's saying I'm at 26%, 26.2, and I have to go through a variance. And this is at the point where I'm expecting a building permit, not at the beginning of the process. So now I'm sort of stuck. I had to commit to tearing down the garage to proceed forward. I have no ability to make changes. I've paid for engineers, I paid for everything else that needed to be done, heating, cooling, so on and so forth. I don't have the chance now to, argument's sake, make the house 28% bigger to make maybe rooms better. I'm sort of stuck. I think I understand why. I'm not really sure. So my sort of is, I really don't want to go through the variance because I'm thinking I fulfilled the criteria originally, and in the 12th hour, all of a sudden I haven't. And if I have to go through the variance, fine, but I don't want to necessarily have to pay for it. Because according to my paperwork, I was ready to go. And I don't know if I have to show you it, do whatever. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hadlow. I have Councillor Best.
Yes, Mr. Hadlow, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that you were originally at 24.9%, I believe there was.
That was the largest number by the surveyor. My original number was 24%.
And what is the maximum lot coverage?
25.
And what do you think put it over that magic 25 besides the garage? Because that's where I have a difficulty with this one as well.
My understanding, it's the roofs on the front porch. If I didn't have roofs on the front porch, I would have no problem. If it was just a deck in the front yard, it wouldn't be lot coverage.
And what is the status of your construction right now?
The house is being built as we speak. Heating's going in, plumbing's going in tomorrow, electrical's been started. Front porches have not been built as of yet, just because I haven't got to them.
That's all for now.
Thank you. Any other councillors, mayor, have a question for the delegate? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadlow. All right, we have another delegate registered. We've got Mr. Craig Sharp and Mr. Brad Clements. Please approach. And I'll ask you gentlemen to also please state your name and address clearly for the record.
Brad Clements, 4231 Dairy Road in Milton here, and I actually own the other property, which it's two pieces of property. So the property we're dealing with is part of the farm, but on the east side.
Craig Sharp, 7052 Appleby Line in Milton. I guess we're referring to the my request for a relief from the consent to sever. The report identifies this is a piece of property that is part of Brad's field. That basically the three sides of my property is bordered by Brad's property. It's a tree farm. The amount of property in question would probably equate to this room diagonally, one half of it. It's field, it's always been field, and it will continue to be field. Back when we moved in 36 years ago, I had a rough idea of what the property lines were, and at the time we did a bit of landscaping and wound up using a part on the perimeter of what I thought was our property, built a rock garden and planted a few trees. And it's been like that for 34 years probably. It was only recently, about a year and a half ago, I believe, that Brad had a survey done and identified that this was actually his property, not mine. And he didn't raise a stink about it, he just identified that maybe this is something we should try to correct and incorporate that property into my property as opposed to the way it is now. It's really just a line being moved on a field. It's really, I have no intention to do anything else with the property, nor I assume does Brad. It's just to sort of formalize something that's been in existence for 36 years, basically 35 years. I just find the fee to be rather extensive considering what we're looking to do, and it kind of takes away the motivation for me to move forward on it, to be honest with it. I notice, I guess I'm pointing out to Section 69(2) of the Planning Act that refers to the unreasonableness of the fees that are involved, and I guess my point would be if this isn't considered unreasonable, then I'm wondering what would be unreasonable, and at what point would you ever enact that part of the Planning Act based on the way it's been described to me.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I would just say that, as I understand it, your Commissioner of Planning and Development, I guess it is, has the authority to make a decision in this case, as I understand it. and that I recognize the issue of having the circulation problem, or whatever you want to call it. But I do feel that a simplified letter under the auspices of the town would go a long way to say, look, folks, this is a movement of a line from here to there. And it is pie-shaped, just about like that. So, you know, a simple saying, you know, I intend to approve this, and, you know, then the circulation doesn't have to go through a process. And I guess relate to the Conservation Authority, they dropped theirs from 2,100 to 125 or something, just to say, you know, we have no concern. So I'm asking, you know, again, the council to consider a reduction in the fee to solve that problem, because it is really something that your staff, as I understand, has authority to deal with, and it's just a matter of getting the T's crossed and the I's dotted properly to do it. And I think very simple letters to each of the group of 20, I guess I'll call them, to solve that problem would be my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Excuse me, just to add to that, originally I was looking at somewhere over $6,000 to just get the administration of having this line moved on a lot plan.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Does anyone have any questions for the delegates? No questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a resolution here. Be it resolved that staff report PD 052-19 be received for information. Do any members of council have, actually, Councillor Hamid has a question. I did see your hand go up.
Yeah, thank you. Just trying to understand this better, because it's not intimately familiar with a lot of these issues. So let's take the second report first, because it came last. It's fresher in my mind. Can you help us understand conservation halting fees and why it was dropped?
Through you, Madam Chair, the fee was not actually dropped. It is the fee that is established for applications where the Conservation Authority does not have an interest. It's their review fee, but it's not a dropped or changed fee. It's simply the fee that is applicable.
Okay, so can you help us understand why our fees are so much higher than conservation halting fees? Like, is that?
The town's fees are based on the administration and evaluation process that we are required legislatively to undertake, so the inputs that are required. While approval authority for an undisputed consent has been delegated to my position, there's still a process to go through that is required by legislation to get to that point. So that includes circulation of the application, public notice, to determine if there are any disputes, and if there are no disputes, then and only then am I granted the authority to approve an application. Otherwise, it is referred to the Land Division, the Town's Committee of Adjustment and Consent. So there is a prescribed process. Otherwise, any decision made would not be valid in law.
So just help me understand, even if both parties are here and they agree, we still have to go through the whole process?
That is correct. It's prescribed by legislation. There's a public consultation process. There's a public right of appeal if a neighbor disputes or objects to the application.
Here, anyway, that's like many other provincial legislation. That doesn't make sense to me, but I see what it is now. So the first issue, the gentleman mentioned the change. How did that happen? Like, how did we miss the 26% instead of 24.9 or whatever it was?
The first application was because the property is located in the character area, and it was essentially for a minor site plan review of a character area property. The dimensions of the garage were not surveyed dimensions, and they were shown as being smaller than they actually are. When subsequently, in conjunction with the building permit, a survey came in, the dimensions of the garage were correct. However, elements of the proposed building, you heard mention of the covered porches, they are included in the coverage calculation in accordance with our zoning bylaw. They were not included, though, in the figures provided on the survey, so the survey dimensions. So the coverage calculations in both cases came out under what was the maximum allowed by the bylaw, but in fact the first one was understated, the second one was missing elements, both of which had the effect of increasing the coverage over what was permitted by the zoning bylaw.
Can I ask a question? When you say they were understated and they were not included, was it by our staff that were understated, not included? Like how?
No, those were the numbers that were submitted by the, in the first case, I'm not sure who prepared the drawing, but it was estimated the size of the garage. I don't believe there was any deliberate intention. It was just simply mismeasured. And the second case was probably a misunderstanding on the part of the surveyor as to what should be included properly in the calculation of coverage. So the statistics provided on the survey were understated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Best?
Yes, on both issues, the one regarding 62 Mile Street, was this an existing garage or proposed garage?
It's an existing garage.
And that's part of my concern here. Regarding the second application regarding on the consent, could you give some of the history and the requirements under lot line realignment? That's one of the history I have through the Halton Agricultural Advisory Committee, that when there is two willing buyer and seller, if they're not creating a new lot, what powers do you have as a planning official?
Through you, Madam Chair, the requirements of the Planning Act are very clear. Whether it's a lot addition or the creation of a new lot, there is a prescribed process that is required to go through. It still requires notification, it still requires public consultation, potentially a hearing if there's a dispute. The only authority delegated to me is in the case of an undisputed consent, and whether that's consent to a lot addition, a lot line adjustment, or to the creation of a new lot. And the legislative process is quite clear in that regard. For any decision to be valid, we have to go through that process. It's legislated.
Thank you. I'll have an amendment later.
Any other questions, comments? No? Oh, Mayor Krantz.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I understand certainly the resolution to be received for information on the assumption that that passes. Would that mean that the requests from these two individuals then are denied?
Perhaps staff can comment on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, the staff recommendation is to uphold the current policy framework and the town's fee bylaw that is in place. That is why the recommendation is to receive for information. If council wishes to decide otherwise, on page 5 of the report, there are two alternatives that are outlined.
Okay, I think that helps clarify, I think, Madam Chair, there. So I guess the other question is, and I stand corrected on this, that do we have any discretion legally with regards to those other options? And I think I heard earlier on there that we can't, and I don't suggest acting illegal for sure. I want to operate within the letter of the law. So we do have an option as to what we do then. I think we should be very clear. At least I want to be very clear.
Through you, Madam Chair, Section 69, Sub 2 of the Planning Act does provide a municipal council with discretion to reduce or waive the fees if the council is satisfied that it's unreasonable under the circumstances to require the applicant to pay the fees.
So, and again, I think on the first presenter there, he used the word, discretion and unreasonable. What might be reasonable to me might not be reasonable to you. So I think in our commissioner's opinion, what would be reasonable or unreasonable, I guess? And I think he questioned this, so I'd be interested in what would be reasonable and what's not.
Through you, Madam Chair, and I'll look to our treasurer to jump in if I'm missing any points. The town has adopted a user pay approach to support the recovery of costs associated with processing an application. I would say if the town's fees exceeded the costs associated, that might be unreasonable. However, the town regularly reviews its user fees. We do detailed analysis of our timesheets, for example. There's a very detailed modeling done through Excel, overseen by our Corporate Services Department. And we do maintain our fees currently so that they are really just recovering our costs and our overhead. So as long as they are in line with that cost recovery and we are maintaining that cost recovery model, in my opinion, they are reasonable.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of council have comments or questions? Councillor Best.
If there be no further comments, I do have an amendment.
Okay, Councillor Best, do you have your amendment ready?
Yes, as pointed out in page 5 of the report, or page 201 of the agenda, if anyone's following us, staff have shown 2 possible amendments that, in accordance with the authorities in both sections for type 2, I was going to make an amendment that the first situation of the consent to sever be reduced by the amount of $39.15 and also the minor variance by $18.77. In both cases, I find a situation here that, you know, I understand where staff are coming from in terms of following the act, but council does have as discretion. As Mr. Clements pointed out, and I did a quick calculation, we're talking about an area the size of this room that I don't think that's going to affect. I know the area. Basically, there's basically 2 adjoining landowners, and I've seen similar situations through the HAC committee where this makes sense. You know, nobody's going to qualify anything. If it was in an urban setting, yeah, I could understand. Regarding 62 Mile Street, this was basically over an existing garage. We're not talking about, if it was a new garage, yeah, I could see a problem there. But the only difference is really for the new building is just covering the porches. If he didn't cover the porches, he wouldn't be going through this. So it's really splitting hairs here, and I don't see this as a situation that we should be charging these people. They've come to us in all good conscience and saying that, wait a minute, I'm going through this whole process. The Conservation Authority's already said it really doesn't matter to us. We're charging a fee. I think both of them are paying enough fees already. This is something that we just show that we do have some discretion here.
Thank you. Councillor Di Lorenzo.
I guess one comment I would like to say by listening to the Commissioner is we're doing this based on a cost recovery. So these fees aren't for the town of Milton to make money or profit or collect fees for the sake of collecting fees. This is just to recover the time that staff need to spend on this to go through the legislative process. But we do have the ability to reduce these fees. If we do reduce the fees to 0, staff still spent that time and hours, and then there's still a cost to that, and then that cost is being borne by the neighbors and other residents and other taxpayers of Milton. There is no free time. But I understand what Councillor Best is saying, but keep in mind, if the applicant had asked to change it for 1 inch or 20 feet, the cost would probably have been the same hours that staff would have had to go through. So like if someone came back and say, well, I want to change and sever 1 inch off my property, it doesn't mean it only costs 10 cents because our staff members have to go through a legislative process. So at some point in time, you know, the administration overhead of going through this process does have a dollar value. So if we reduce it to 0, if that's Councillor's wish, just bear in mind that that cost is going to be borne by the rest of the tax base.
Okay, so Councillor Best, just a clarification on your proposed amendment, and this is a proposal that both fees be waived altogether to reduce to 0.
Yeah, I'm trying this on. If other councillors want to vote against this and bring in your own amendment, still feel free, because, you know, just I understand where Councillor Di Lorenzo's coming from, but please note, in the case of Mr. Hadlow, he's more than paying enough through development charges and building permit fees and other fees, and also improving the neighbourhood, because I know the house involved. This is a huge improvement for the neighbourhood.
All right, so I guess I'm looking for a seconder then. Okay, Councillor Malbeuf. And Councillor Ali, I knew you had a question. Did you want to? No, you're good. Okay. All right, well, I'll call the vote on that then. All in favor? Of the amendment. Yeah, so this would be an amendment to waive fees to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I think that passes. Okay, thanks for bearing with us, everyone. So the next item on the agenda is staff report number CORS-072-19. This is the multi-year budget strategy. And the recommendation is that the town of Milton adopt an initial residential property tax rate target that is 15% below the lower of the city of Burlington and the town of Halton Hills, and that the town of Milton's progress towards achieving the target be reported annually as part of the budget process, and that as part of the future master and strategic planning exercises, service level options be identified for council to provide the related service at a cost that is at least 20% below the average of the municipal comparators selected, and that once achieved, the long-term sustainability of the 15% target be reassessed with consideration for the results of master and strategic planning exercises that will be undertaken as outlined above. Glenn, did you want to speak to this at all? No?
As we had spoke to it at length at the workshop, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll save council from another overview of the report.
Okay, thank you. Much appreciated. Anyone have questions or comments? Councillor Best?
Yes, a question to any of staff, not only Glenn, we're thinking from the report. Do we have any other policies where we follow other municipalities? I know we try to do best practices, but do we have anything specific where we're basically following another municipality's lead?
Through evaluations, we certainly look at other municipalities, but specific to within policy, I cannot think of one where ingrained in the policy is such a comparison. Oh, sorry, maybe, an example may be within compensation policy where it actually prescribes the comparator group. Good point.
That's all for now.
Okay, Councillor Challenor, I think I saw your hand.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I raised at the workshop the following issues that are still valid in my view, and the first thing is that, you know, we're comparing ourselves to municipalities that we know are not models of efficiency. Further, we're assuming that our municipality is the same as everybody else in terms of what we pay our staff, the amount of staff we have, the service level, the cost of that service, the cost of operations, our labor relationships, etc. The reality is there are no comparisons to be made. However, Madam Chair, I think it's a valuable discussion to have, and I think it would be a valuable piece of work to better understand. And I would suggest an amendment, frankly, to the word "adopt" and change that word to investigate. I think that's a reasonable request. I don't think that anybody around this table has enough information to support this resolution this evening, and frankly, it would be entirely irresponsible to support this motion the way it's been written. And so I'm suggesting that the word investigate replace the word adopt, and that staff go back and do their due diligence, as I know that they will. But I think that the arguments I make were valid at that workshop are still valid this evening. And I think that we owe it to the taxpayers of this community to do our due diligence before we consider a report of this nature.
Okay, Councillor Challoner, do you have a seconder, or is there a seconder? Okay, Mayor Krantz. Councillor Cluett, you have a question.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was just trying to get your attention because I believe myself, along with Councillor Ali, mentioned, moved and seconded. I would look at that as a friendly amendment as well, instead of having to go through the whole other process. But I think it is a fair point to, instead of adopting, to have that word investigate. I think it's a useful exercise going forward, and that's. And I'm excited that we're actually moving forward with the idea of doing this. It's not guaranteeing tax increases at certain levels or guaranteeing our taxes are going to be at a certain level by a certain time. We're investigating, we're looking at what other municipalities are doing, gauging that with response from our residents as to what services that they are requesting from us. And that goes throughout the yearly process as well. So I'll be more than happy to accept that as a friendly amendment to have staff investigate as opposed to adopt.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz.
Thank you, Chair. And again, not to echo what Councillor Challoner said, I certainly subscribe to all of that. And I will support the amendment again because I seconded it there. But I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment on the assumption that the report and the resolution, the recommendation as originally suggested. Here's one individual that does not want to apologize for having one of the lowest property tax bases in the GTA. And if we adopted this, that's exactly, in my opinion, what we would be doing, is apologizing for having one of the best and lowest property tax rates in not only the region of Halton, but in the GTA. So I'm not about to apologize for that. So on the assumption if this was to pass in this form that's recommended, all we're doing is committing the balance of this term of this council to tax increases. That's exactly what we'd be doing, and I don't want any part of that, because I was prepared to call for a recorded vote if this was to go ahead the way that is presented there, because this really is a time to stand up and be counted, to say, hey, we're on the threshold of increasing taxes forever until we catch up to those, as Councillor Challoner said, that's really not responsible. And I'm not going to single out any one or two municipalities, but you know, I don't want any part of that. So, yeah. But anyway, other than that, I don't have any opinions on this report.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz. Councillor Malbuff.
Yeah, just clarification from staff on the comments of the mayor. By passing this resolution, are we bound as a council to follow this, or is this just investigation and that it would be at budget time that we decide whatever rate we're using? This does not bind us to go to that target. Is that the way I see it? Is that right? Correct?
Correct. Annual changes would be subject to budget approval. We would just provide a context during the budget process as to where we stood in relation to if council actually had a specific target in mind in terms of the level of funding for programs.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you. I have an amendment, but I just have a couple of thoughts. I'll take a contrarian view because, oh, by the way, I should clarify that I'm assuming that Councillor Challoner's motion amendment is friendly amendment as part of the motion. So I'm talking in context with his motion. I actually see it differently than Mayor Krantz does. Right now, we are for good reasons, catching up with other municipalities. Our tax increases in the past few years have been faster than other municipalities, and understandably so. So I don't see this as a promise to increase taxes. Rather, I see this as us putting an upper limit. Call me an optimist, but that's what I see, because if we don't have an upper limit, then we'll just keep flying blind and go wherever. So I think this, the way I see it at least, especially with Councillor Challoner's amendment, I see this as, let's make sure we don't do anything that gets us closer to 15% below the lowest municipality in Halton. And as we noticed in the workshop, even after that, even if we were just 15% below an average lowest municipality in Halton, we would still be the lowest tax municipality. Our position in that chart will not change. It's just the gap will get closer. So I do support that motion for that reason, because I don't see this as a commitment to increase taxes. I see it as a cap on how close we get. That said, though, the third paragraph is something I have an amendment for. The third paragraph, at least my understanding is, it says that when we look at different service standard in the future with our master plan and strategic planning exercises, we will only be given options that keep each service level at least 20% below an average municipality. The issue I have with that is that it kind of binds the future council, because the future council, or even us in the future, might decide that in certain areas we want to have a better standard than other municipalities. Like, I don't really care what an average municipality does. I don't think very highly of an average municipality. If you look at how the City of Toronto, how the old municipality of York and other areas have handled their historic neighborhoods, historic properties, the character neighborhoods, that's not what we want to do at all. So my amendment in general, before I read it, is that I'd like to see all the options, and then the council can decide, provided that our overall taxes stay at least 15% below. So just want to read the amendment first. So the amendment is that a third clause be struck and replaced with the following: and that as part of future master and strategic planning exercises, service level options and delivery methods that support council's objective of maintaining the lowest tax rate in the region on a sustainable basis be identified. So it doesn't bind us to anything. It just identifies options for councils to make decisions on. I did not lobby for a seconder, so.
Okay, so if everyone's okay with the friendly amendment, I guess we can go ahead and that would be Councillor Challoner's amendment to change adopt to investigate, and then also strike, it was the third paragraph, right, Councillor Hamid, and then replace it with what you read out. Okay. Does anyone want that read again? Any questions? Comments? No? Oh, Councillor Best.
Yes, I appreciate where Councillor Hamid's going for, but I agree with the Mayor and Councillor Challoner that you look at each community that's been mentioned here, they're all unique. Halton Hills doesn't even have a transit service. And the opposite, Burlington has a totally full-time fire department. They have 197 firefighters. We have 45. Halton Hills has 53. Each one has unique characteristics, and we're elected to lead this municipality and provide the best services possible at the lowest cost, not follow other municipalities. And that's a concern I have where, basically our treasurer has highlighted this is the first time we've done this. I appreciate the amendment. I think I'll support that because we're looking at what's sustainable. We've had an infrastructure fund that started. We may have to do more in other fields, but we have to keep aware that we're looking at the best practices. One of the concerns I see looking across the province, we have other municipalities that are looking at laying off staff. They're looking at closing fire halls. They're looking at amalgamations where they can't cover the costs. In Northern Ontario, which I know a number of representatives, the mayor knows some of them, they're looking at saying, hey, we can't go on this way. We have to basically come up with a different model. That we avoided the regional review, but what I'm hearing at Queen's Park is rationalization, where if you want to have provincial money, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. Well, I don't want to be in that position. I want to be leading, not following.
Thank you, Councillor Best. If there's no further comments or questions, I will call the vote on the amendment. So all those in favor? Okay, so that carries. Okay, so we also have to have a vote on the main motion as amended. So I'll call the vote on that as well. All those in favor? Okay, also carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. Regional Council update. Anyone have any reports? Councillor Best?
Just a reminder, if you didn't see it in the news media, that the region did approve a 1.75%, even with the provincial downloading. So stay tuned for next year, because we're probably seeing a lot more of it. And I believe Chair Carr extended similar wishes as the mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other regional councillors with updates? Councillor Hamid?
Just a really quick update. I thought that's what Mayor Best was going to say. The region passed the budget, and the capital program contains a lot of projects across Milton. Pretty much every regional road in Milton is going to be expanded over the next 10 years. So I encourage people to look at the regional budget and that list of capital programs.
Great. Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the end of the open session.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Chair, I have nothing under regional council update, but I would move the confidential item there unless there was a member of council that wished to go into camera. At least in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary, but I would move it.
Okay, Councillor Best.
I'd request, I just want to get some staff perspective.
Sorry, so you're requesting to go into confidential?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Cluett, seconded by Councillor Hamid. Be it resolved that council convene into confidential session to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board with respect to the minutes of settlement regarding 2 appeals to official plan amendment number 31. All those in favor? Okay. Thanks to members of the public for coming out tonight, and wish you very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, wonderful New Year, and hopefully we won't be here too much longer than you are.